Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. Thank you for joining us from all over the world. My name is Kate. I'm an event officer at Insead, and today, with my colleague Tony Wijaja, our Executive Degree Recruiting Associate Director, we are delighted to welcome you to this webinar which will be split in two parts. In the first place, we will hear from two renowned corporate leaders on digital transformation. They will be interviewed by our Insead Professor Joerg Niessing. Please feel free to drop your questions all along the first hour if they're related to this interview, since we will then move on to a second part. Our Director, Executive Degrees Recruiting, Mike Hallett, will introduce you to our degree programs. You will then get the opportunity to have your program-related questions answered during a Q&A session. To drop your questions, click on the Q&A button located on the bottom of the toolbar located on your screen. The session should last an hour and a half and will be recorded. We will also post it on YouTube and make sure to send it to you individually. Without further ado, let me hand over the microphone to Tony. Tony, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kate. Really appreciate that. Before I introduce the panelists, I'd like to run a very quick 10-second survey so I can better understand the audience who is in the crowd. So in the future, we will design better events. It will just take you 10 seconds to answer a very quick survey. Kate, if you could just launch the survey very quickly. Thank you. Just want to know if you're here purely for the professor and two alumni discussion, or for both that as well as information about the degree program, right? Just so to have a better understanding of that. Thank you. All right. Okay, thereabout. Thank you so much for your participation. Now, before I introduce the professor and two alumni, I'd like to thank Wina, who is the originator for this event. Wina is head of commercial excellence in Merck Life Science Indonesia. She focuses on building the company's digital capabilities, driving commercial enablement activities in the organization. She's also a graduate of the Insead Executive MBA program. She is also the executive member of the Insead Alumni Association in Indonesia. Wina, would you like to say hi to the audience?
Hi, thanks, Tony. Thanks, everyone. It's really great to be here today and to see you all. 2020 has been an interesting year for sure, and it continues to surprise us, I believe. We will discuss today a very exciting topic around digital transformation. Hopefully, it can be something that we further look forward to in 2021. We definitely have some excellent speakers today and excellent moderators to give us some insights on what's happening in their industries. I hope there is something very interesting that can be taken away from today's session. Thank you again for being here. Looking forward to connect with you all. Any questions about Insead Indonesia alumni, let me know, contact me. You can find me in LinkedIn. So thank you again, and over back to you, Tony.
Thanks very much, Wina. So the first alum I'd like to introduce is Veranita, who is the CEO of Airasia Indonesia. She is Indonesia's first and only female airline CEO. She serves as the chairwoman, Indonesia National Air Carrier Association. She is passionate about driving digital transformation in business and beyond, helping local and global organizations become leaders through technology and developing women leaders across the pipeline. Through her 20+ years of career, she helps companies across industries deliver sustainable growth and make positive impacts in society against a complex and volatile environment. She's excited to support the young Indonesian talents participate in global marketplace through teaching programs with leading universities. Veranita believes in the world where everyone is accepted for what they are and can access equal opportunities. Prior to the role, Veranita was the sales director at Kraft and had held leadership roles in Danone and British American Tobacco. Parallel to holding P&L responsibility, she's a champion for diversity and inclusion in workplace and won the UN Global Award in New York in 2016 for gender equality and women's empowerment. She's a graduate of the Insead Executive MBA program and holds a bachelor degree in industrial engineering from Bandung Institute of Technology. Welcome, Veranita. The second alum, thank you. The second alum is Steve, currently based in Shanghai, China. Steve became the managing director of Merck Life Science China in 2016, heading the research solutions business. Steve highly values team collaboration. He has successfully led the team to develop winning business strategies and achieve double-digit business growth. Customer experience has always been Merck's and Steve's top priority. He drives digitization by leveraging e-commerce platform, for instance, Alibaba 1688's big data, cloud services, and artificial intelligence. Steve has a degree in Global Executive MBA from Insead, and he holds a master degree in bioindustry as well as a diploma in food and beverage process. Steve was awarded the Magnolia Silver Award by the city government in 2018 in recognition for his contribution in Shanghai's development. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah. Last but not least, Professor Joerg Niessing is a member of the faculty of at Insead and a global recognized expert and strategic advisor on digital transformation, digital strategy, customer centricity, and data analytics. On this site, you see now there is a little LinkedIn. You can connect to learn more about some of his work. He's the program director at Insead's a flagship program, B2B marketing strategies and leading digital marketing strategy. Over the past 5 years, Joerg has engaged with more than 3,000 executives from a wide range of companies in Europe, the Americas, Middle East, Asia, including Google, IBM, PwC, and many others. Joerg holds a PhD in marketing and a Master of Science from the University of Münster. He has published more than 20 academic cases. He's won a Best Marketing Case Award by the Case Center in 2018 for his case on a course digital transformation. His recent book on the definitive guide to B2B digital transformation talks about how to drive uncommon growth by prioritizing customers over technology. Joerg also launched a fast-growing resource hub, B2B digital transformation.com is on a website, that's the URL there, where business leaders will find more content from his book, reports, research, webinar recordings, and many other things. Please feel free to connect on LinkedIn by taking a photo of the barcode. Just remember that there will be 2 Q&A sessions. One for the digital strategy, and the second part is towards the end about degree program later on, right? Anyway, without further ado, I'd like to hand over the floor to Professor Joerg Niessing. Professor.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tony, for this nice introduction, and thanks, Vina, again for being the initiator here, and of course a big thanks, Veranita and Steve, for taking time out of your busy calendars as running businesses as Tony described it. So really good to have you. We have over 1,200 signups here. There will be hopefully lots of questions at the end. We will keep some time for this, but let's dive right into it. I mean, Veranita, let me start with you, because can it be more difficult than running an airline in these days? I mean, how are you doing? There must be lots of things you're worrying about.
Yes, thank you, Joerg. Hi, everyone. Thanks you again to Vina for the fantastic session that we have. So yeah, it's exciting, lots of learning, a bit overwhelming at the beginning, but I'm okay. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, that's good. And Steve, what about you? I mean, you are at Merck Life Science. I mean, we dive later into COVID and the topic of digital resilience, but is it more an opportunity for you, or is it more a challenge for you? I mean, what's the global picture for you?
Actually, for us, it's very interesting year because we are in a license which is really the heart of the COVID situation, from diagnostic test or research and manufacturing. But makes the interesting time is the virtualization of the business, because as we cannot visit customer, we have to find a way to reach customer and to keep engaged customer. I think this is probably the years making a big change for digitalization.
Yeah, you're bringing up a good point. And I mean, as the audience realized, the topic of today is, we call it customer-centric digital strategies, or back to Vina's point earlier, customer-centric digital transformation. So let's maybe start with a little poll here with the audience. A simple question for the audience here. Out of the list that you will see on your screen by now, hopefully you see a list of items. And simple question, what are the key drivers of digital transformation within your organization? I'm pretty sure you all somehow in your organizations, you have to deal with this topic, and you can pick up to 3 drivers. Let me give you a few seconds here. And then we dive into the results and see whether it's in line with what you are facing, Veranita and Steve, in your jobs. Great. By now, everybody should see the results. I mean, we see working in a more agile, flexible way. Number one, 47% of our audience was putting this one as a key driver. Then we also see, again, the customer journey comes up here with almost 40%. Engaged customers, Steve, back to your point, right, on multiple channels with 40%. I mean, let's maybe start there, because it's also a little bit in line with what I have seen in a study that we have done, which was during COVID. And of course, customer-centric strategies was coming up here as a key driver as well. So maybe, Steve, back to your point earlier, let's maybe start there. You said engaging with customers across channels. I mean, can you elaborate on this a little bit? Was it already a task pre-COVID, or did you get pushed into this because of the COVID situation?
Actually, I like your poll, because all the questions for me are relevant. I couldn't make a choice, actually. That's my problem. You say only 3, I could say everything. But to come to your point, I think the business was really relying on go-to-market, probably sometimes traditional go-to-market, where you have people on the field, or you have a set of access to customer. But the last few years, we have been driving digital transformation. But definitively, the angle of this year has been really focusing on why customers are not ordering, or who will continue to order, or where is the market is moving. So, which is really focused on data, how we leverage the existing set of data, that we can really understand what's going on, and then having the right actions. I think this is probably the big move that happened this year. Fortunately, I will say, for the last 3 years, we have built our infrastructure and data sets, and really set up the right access to our data, in order to really be able to build on the knowledge we required. But I think this is a multi-year program that we have been starting a few years ago, and lucky we were, because we could quickly access to those data. I think that's probably the interesting part of the digital transformation, is you have to understand what you want to achieve, what is your objective, and not just thinking about, okay, I want to do digital transformation. What does it mean for your company, but mainly what is your, and for us, the customer was probably the most important, is what we need to do to make sure we are still doing business and access to our customer, and keep high level services.
I think you bring up a very good point here, Steve, and we are seeing that in my research as well. Of course, technology is important, right? But it's also about how can I use the technology to, at the end, create value for the customer. We will dive deeper into this. I mean, here, Veranita, I mean, I can't remember how many planes do you have? 300? I mean, how many are in use right now? Can you still engage with your customers? I mean, how do you do this?
Yes, thank you. So in the group, we have more than 270 planes. In Indonesia, we operate with 28 planes. And today, for Indonesia, we are flying 75% of our capacity, which is already a kind of, good progress. However, when I look back the experience 7-8 months ago, when we first understood the COVID situations, we hibernated all our operations, means all our planes are on the ground, and that was the biggest hit that we had in the history of the company and the group as well. So it was intense.
Yeah, and when it comes to customer centricity or customer-centric strategies at Airasia, I mean, what are the burning questions that you are currently facing?
Absolutely. Okay, the burning question is how we revive growth, right? How we recover not only our business, but also the industry. And the consumers that we see in Indonesia, they have, they're moving more digitals than before, right? And then also there are more health concerns. So there's a lot of change in terms of consumers' behaviors towards traveling and towards the experience of the journey of traveling. So we have to adapt very quickly and understand, and also try to lead the environment so that we can capture more values and provide, best experience to the passengers.
Yeah, maybe here you bring up a good point. Back also here maybe to my research, I always think about a digital transformation, and that, Steve, goes back to your earlier point. What's your objective, right? As an organization, I mean, do you want to sell more? Do you want to sell differently? Or do you want to sell new things, right? And at the end, Steve, as you said, I wanted to go back to this about the objectives and the goals that you should have as a leader, as an organization. I mean, how do you go about this? Because I hear this in the classroom all the time. This like, where should I start, right? Digital transformation is often an undefined buzzword. And most of the organizations I'm talking to, most of the executives I'm talking to, they really struggle to find the right starting point, this objective, the goal, which did sound easy in your answer earlier. But can you elaborate on this? How do you go about this and how do you prioritize?
Yeah, maybe I can start. I think you raised the question where a lot of people are facing. To be honest, I made a shortcut. I disrupt my organization. So which means I hire someone from other industry who has already previous digitalization experience in some more advanced field. And we have been thinking where digitalization will be able to create value within our business. So not trying to evaluate what we are doing, evolve what we are doing, but more coming to a next step. And we have been building a strategy, a multi-year strategy, actually, to really understand how we will reach this level. And I think what I've seen at the beginning is many people, when I arrived in China, they were as you said, digitalization was a buzzword. So everyone wants to do digitalization. So everyone, they have their small project. But a lot of project has been failing because the case itself was not properly defined, the resources was not there, the readiness was not there. Then we more or less stop everything and we rebuild from scratch what is the real objective, where digitalization will bring value for our business. And when we say business, at the end of the day, we say customer. So, and by looking at this, we have done a multi-stage strategy by defining the foundation. And then from the foundation, you build, when you have done the foundation, you can really move to the next step. So I think it's really where you have to be cautious, not going too fast, but more right. But in the same time, you have to accept that it will disrupt your organization. And also maybe creating different expectation and fear, because people probably don't understand what you are looking for.
Yeah, Veranita, anything to add? I saw you.
Yes, in my end, I'm echoing what Steve said because it resonates also with the environment that we're in. For Asia, we have always, I mean, before COVID, we also already have been transforming digitally because we are, many people understand Asia as an airline, but in our situations, we are more than airline. We have a number of other line of businesses and we have in the organization digital capabilities across our businesses. And to us, what is important is to understand the objectives, again, to what you said, is on how we capture growth, because especially for Indonesia, that is one of the growth markets for Asia. We're quite small in domestic market, but we're a leader in international. So the key questions that we have always in our mind is how we capture growth. However, to do it in a way that is efficient, because we're a low-cost airline. Every single dollar counts in our cost structure. So how do we provide maximum consumer experience, best consumer experience to capture growth in a way that is efficient? Now, when it comes to efficient, we're talking about, more than, we fly in the group 80 million passengers a year. And there's a lot of data inside that we can't really process manually, right? So we have to rely on our digital capabilities, and majority of our sales and majority of the transactions that consumer make with us are done digitally. So how do we keep up with that, a rapid, accelerated digital trend of the consumers? That is already happening before COVID. Now, after COVID, or during COVID to be precise, we were slowing down in several areas. And but then again, we are accelerating in some other areas because we had to make clear priorities of what we want to do in short term, medium term, and long term, because COVID-19 is to us the largest pressure or crisis in the business that we ever had as a company. We've gone through a number of crises before, but nothing as big and as deep as COVID-19. So in order to do that, we need to make sure that everyone is on the same page in terms of goals and objectives, priorities, what we want to do and what we let go for the time being, because we don't have the resources to do it. And we need to be courageous enough to say, okay, this one I close, I divest, and I don't do it all, and I'll come back in 2 and 3 years. So we were very decisive in doing that. And the other thing that we're doing also is to try to lead and anticipate the change, not only to follow the change and respond or react to the change, but to lead it. So there's a lot of initiative that we do and strategy that we implement in AirAsia around, how do we lead in terms of a contactless journey of the passengers. Health is the new currency, hygiene is the new currency, and how we can stay on top of it. So that's and by capturing through our digital platforms the new trends. Today, consumers in our space are making a reservation for flights last minute. In the past, we were seeing passengers making booking reservations a month before departure, 2 months before departure, so that we can kind of project how we want to do sales. But now they're making choices of flying 1 day or 2 days before departure. Now, if in airline industry, our inventory is our seats, right? If we can't predict sales, then if you fly the plane and we have half of the plane empty, there goes your inventory. So digital capabilities is very key for us to help to, contain the situation and maximize all the opportunities that we have.
Yeah, no, this is great. Your points here, and I remember from our pre-discussions, you said at one point, it's also about training the customers, right, to use digital. Maybe, Veranita, if you could elaborate on this part, because I think it's very interesting. Most organizations I talk to, the customer is way ahead than the organizations, right? It's about the digital maturity of the organization, but it's also about the digital maturity of the customer. So how do you do this in the countries that you are responsible for, when you are saying lots of the customers maybe want it still the traditional way, but you trying as a CEO to push the digital engagement, the digital selling forward? So how do you find the right balance between these two?
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting question. What we do is we want to we understand, you know, which, I mean, Indonesia is a big country, right? It's a big country in a sense of, you know, geographically and diversity of people in the country. So what we do is we understand in which geography that, you know, people will pick up, you know, the urban areas, the tech savvy consumers, because we have their data. So we understand the kind of behavior that they have. We can maximize opportunities with them. And the ones that are not yet inside of our platform, we have a number of initiatives to help them understand the values behind moving towards digital transactions with when they do booking with us. So that's how what we do fundamentally.
Yeah. So it goes a little bit back to Steve's earlier point about the seamless experience across channels. And I mean, glancing also here always to the questions, I mean, please keep the audience here, please type them in. I might reference some of them already. And Steve, I mean, maybe the next one is a good one for you also about the digital engagement. Frank is asking here the question, yeah, how do you engage with customers digitally, bearing in mind the constraints of RGPD, right? I mean, this is maybe more an important question for you in the pharma industry than for Veranita in the travel industry. So how do you do this as Merck?
Yeah, so I'm in the license, so I'm not in the healthcare, which means we still have opportunity to reach customer. But what has been changing a lot, and COVID has been accelerating, is in the past we used to visit customers, but now customer doesn't have time and less time for us. But in the same time, with COVID, we cannot visit anymore, mainly in academia. So the big question mark is how the digitalization can be a tools, and I think China has a very different model with Alibaba, you know, the Taobao, Jingdong, where they have been really intensifying the e-commerce. But in the same time, you have a lot of platforms like TikTok, where they are driving a lot of video connection engagement. And we have been in the B2B in license, the first one creating a live streaming connection with customer on the license market, on the B2B market, where we really create live streaming and connect and get direct feedback on the platform with the customer. And I think this is probably a different way, because customers now are looking forward for the next one, which means we are creating a kind of momentum where customers want to hear about us and they are happy to see us on the screen because we don't visit them anymore. But in the same time, they are very interacting and looking forward. The power of this as well is, instead of visiting 1, 2, 3 customers in a day, you touch hundreds of customers or 100,000 of customers in the same time. So the reach is much more powerful, and you accelerate actually the engagement with customers. So I think the digital marketing, the virtual aspect, and of course the data, because as you do your poll today, you collect the profile of people, and by profiling people, you are able to better create a more specific connection for specific customer. So you are really addressing the right message to the right customer. And I think this is probably the connections between the data management and the analytics behind, and the digital marketing you create to better address the right message to the right customer at the right time.
And maybe here, I like what you both actually said about goal-oriented strategy execution, goal-oriented transformation. You both talked about data, you both talked about technology. And of course, as we know, technology is important, but I mean, Veranita, you also said at the beginning, sometimes we don't have the resources, right? So how do you, let's move maybe this question, how do you bridge the technology that is needed to achieve your goals, right? I mean, again, I hear a lot and see a lot of organizations spending millions in the latest buzzwords, right? In the latest trends, wasting time, wasting money. So how do you go about it? Because it also requires a cross silo coordination, right? Between IT, between strategy. So how do you go about it to find the right technology to achieve your goals? Veranita, maybe if you want to start, yeah.
Yes, in our situation, because the crisis was intense to us, we have a few choices of, talking about long term. We think about long term, but in our situation, survival can be a first step to manage, right? That time. Today, the worst is behind us, and that comes to understanding, what is the goal in between, in the short term, mid-term, and long term. And we need to be very clear on this, and we need to align everybody on this, right? So we need to let go. Those are the things that we want to do, but the impact will be long term, and we really need to make the trade-off. So having it very clear on what exactly that we need to do, depending on the segment of time we're in, it's very clear. And then after that, we see that, hey, to enable this, because to us, digital is a enabler. It's not the strategy by itself, right? So it's just to facilitate the business goals, right? So what we do is to say, okay, in this time frame, what are the values that we want to create to our consumers? So everything is consumer centric, because that's where the revenue comes from, to be very honest. And then, but also having the right balance between, okay, if we need this, but in the future, we also need fundamentally this type of elements to go through. And then we need to also manage the long term in a proper balance. For instance, I give you an example. Right, we still make investments a lot in technology, even in the short term, that we need to push for recovery. We are the quite advanced in terms of introducing to the market what we call as faces. This is the facial recognition for booking, so for check-in. So in the normally passengers, they need to go and take tickets, and then press buttons, screens, and so on. We want to make sure that they see the values of not having to engage with lots of services, so it's contactless. So we introduce this. We know that at the end of the day, this will become a future anyway. So we know parallel to trying to push recovery, calm everyone down with all the turbulence that is happening, we also smartly and carefully invest in technologies that are gonna stay and help us in the future.
Yeah, very good point. Let me maybe ask one follow-up question here, because it's linked to the question from Vincent here on customer expectations about digital solutions, right? So again, sometimes customers want the fancy solution, where you are saying as a leader in your organization, this is not a good use case, right? This doesn't create growth. I mean, again, this how do you find the right balance of like training customers, as you described it in the use case you just gave as an example? This is good for you as an airline, but many customers might not even be willing to do so because of data privacy, data security, right? So how do you do this?
Okay, so first of all, what we try to understand is what they need, because at the end of the day, it's not about what we can do, but it's about what consumers values and what drives their, at the end of the day, willingness to pay, right? So we start from that. What we do also is to understand what kind of platform that they will be willing to engage if we are able to address the barriers that they have today, right? Around, as you pointed out, data privacy, around, there are always unintentional consequences of new things, right? So we need to educate them. And in order to understand which one that we want to push forward and which one we probably want to park for later stages, this is where customer data are very important to us. This is where gaining customer insights are very important to us. A good thing is, like, majority of our consumers are on our digital platform, because transactions are done digitally more than 70-80%. So we understand where they go, we understand if they go with their family, if they go with carrying how many baggages, and so on and so forth. So we study that and we use that information to understand whether or not they will, engage with us in the new platform that introduced. And when it comes to introducing platform, of course, first we're very, very cautious, and then we also use test models, test platforms, so we don't roll out everything like big, because then you will have difficulties, with resources. But we can have, like, in some areas where we think that adoptions will be, quite likely, so we do it and learn from them, see how they respond, fine tune, adjust the models, and replicate in other areas with different elements adjusted.
Yeah.
So it's really continuous learning as opposed to one size fits all, silver bullet kind of thing.
Yeah. Before I give you a follow-up question on this, maybe Steve here, from your perspective, from Merck Life Science, I mean, how do you deal with all the technologies you could leverage, and how do you identify and prioritize the ones that create value for you?
I think I like the continuous evolution and learning. Don't try to jump too much on complex technology, but getting right on what you want to achieve is important. And I think the learning is also learning to try fast, fail fast concept. So which means you have to also get a new type of organization and stakeholder that accept that will not overarching a project management of 2 years just for a project, but more or less driving projects for 3 to 6 months. And then looking at the market reaction, the customer reaction, or the user reaction, and then doing this learning to move to the next step. I think this is really where, and it's helping as well when you want to create this digital transformation adoption, mainly for the big corporate where you have management, they are not really understanding all the concept, is to do some quick win. Because if you can really come quickly on the market or on the ideas showing the outcome quickly, you will create a credibility and you will get typically more resources to move to the next step. So I think this is really a correlation between agility and testing, and in the same time, the good feedback from customer that makes you tell you what are the right direction or the wrong direction. So I think it's really a journey. And I would like to say digital transformation is not a project. It's not an initiative. Is a continuous evolution of a transformation journey that you have to go through. So when you start, you have to continue. You cannot say, okay, it costs too much, I'm stopping, because at the end of the day, the world is going to the same direction. And that's probably often the challenge from people, is they give you a budget and say, okay, go through the budget, and oh, I don't have budget, I have to stop. And say, yeah, but this is a long-term strategy. It's not something you do it for short term.
Yeah, I completely agree, Steve, and that's also what we see in our research. The successful companies, they don't treat it as a project; they see it as an ongoing journey. But maybe linked to this, I mean, you both talked about agility. I mean, you just said it, Steve. Fail fast, right? Again, lots of students, executives in the classroom. I see that as well, and they say, "Yeah, this is great, but if failing is expensive, you never experiment, right? You never innovate, right? But you both talked about use cases. You both talked about test and learn. So how do you make this agile, these agile moves, these agile sprints? How do you make them, yeah, let's say cheap, right? Because if it's expensive, organizations don't do it. Maybe Veranita, well, let's start with you.
My view is again, I always start with priorities. You need to be very clear which are your domain of priorities, that will create values, if not now, medium term, I'm sure in the future. So it's not about, let's try something new because it's exciting, because it sounds cool, because everybody's doing it. That's number one. Number two is to really pilot with controllable scale as opposed to big one. And here we can negotiate for resources, right? We don't need to invest like $1 million right away, but we can do it with task cases in an environment where we know that we have all the attributes and elements that we will need to assess when we want to go in a rollout stage, making it big. So I think doing it in a scale that is reasonable helps us to also make sense to the organization, like what Steve said, bring credibility. You have proof of concept, and after that, of course, you will need to simplify some of the things. You don't need to go with full scale functionalities, but you understand how the environment and the dynamics works. And then when you get it, you kind of figure out, then you start with the rolling stage with the fine tune and so on. So it's really, I'm echoing what Steve said. It's a journey, and the more practical way of getting started is by starting in a size that that makes sense for you as an organization.
Yeah. Steve, anything to add from your end? Yeah.
No, I think this is probably the challenge that people, the fear of wasting money or even failing. I think you have to overcome by making small and risk control. And I think you at the end of the day in digitalization, if you go by small incrementation, you quickly identify if it will work and not work. And I think coming back to the agility is, you don't write on stone what you will do next, because your next will be defined by the learning of the previous. And I think this is probably where you have to really work on the very small steps, and you test. And when you have tested, yeah, it works, let's move. It doesn't mean you plan in advance the next step, but you may have different direction. And I think this is probably where you minimize the risk and I probably make the success more efficient, because you don't need to wait 1 year before you know if it works or not.
Yeah. Great. I mean, before we dive into the questions here from the audience, maybe a question for the audience. Let's do another quick poll about the COVID situation. And again, we don't want to make this a COVID-related webinar, but I wanted to ask the audience here, how has your digital strategy or transformation shifted because of the spread of COVID? So 4 options here, 5 options. Please select one from accelerating to actually putting it on hold. Let's see what the audience is saying. In the organizations you're currently working for. Okay, so let's take a look. Yeah, maybe not a big surprise. 50% accelerated their digital strategy or transformation efforts. I mean, here, because I was asking this question again, we realized now at Insead, I'm getting lots of emails from former students, former executives saying, oh, Jörg, we finally do what we should have done actually 5 years ago, right? And Steve and Veranita, you already said earlier, you started your journey already some time ago, right? And we see that companies that have done this are now actually even doing better than the ones that are now rushing into these digital transformation efforts because they didn't take care of it. I mean, any comments here from you? And what's your advice? Because we most likely will end up with similar situations in the future. Besides, it needs to be a transformational journey, what you said earlier.
I think in my view today, all organizations will need to embark digitalization, because that's where the world moves and that's where business is heading. So it's a matter of how you do it, how fast you do it, and how much resources that you want to do it, in each of the every steps. But, I think all organizations must embrace it. It's not like an option of not doing it.
No.
No, I will agree on that. I saw one of the questions talking about very traditional industry where digitalization is not there. Actually, we are from a very traditional industry, very science and technology, and actually we are very fast on digitalization because you should not look at, you should try to also generate ideas. So in our company, we create a kind of an ideation process in order to collect all the type of ideas coming from in digitalization, because we can read a lot in the different books that digitalization should come from the top and should be a strategy driven, which is true, and more often I will say it should come from the business, because if you say this is a customer-centric approach, which means the business has to drive it with different stakeholders like IT and so on, but you still need ideas, and interestingly, a lot of people have ideas but don't know how to make it happen, or they believe it's maybe not right. So we create an ideation process where people have opportunity to come like a startup to say, okay, I have this idea, and here is they come with a business case, and they have to explain what will be the value in terms of business in order to get some revenue to make it happen. And actually that has been one of the starting point of different small digital projects that were fitting to an overall umbrella of strategy. Yeah. And that's an easy way, but also a way to engage people to make it happen.
Yeah, this is a very good point, Steve. And let's maybe open now, let's move to the Q&A here for this first part of this webinar, because I think your point is a good link to a question here from Tabo on the people, right? So you just said it, how do you engage? Yes, you need top down, but you need to encourage and engage the people, right? You need the right skills, the right capabilities. Yeah, back to Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I mean, so how do you do this in your organization? Because we learned earlier, this is just critical. Too many organizations fail because they put digital transformation just on paper, but they never really execute it by engaging their people. So what's the secret sauce here for you?
From my end would be to make visible how digital makes an impact to business outcomes and what's in it for the people, as opposed to, hey, we need to do it because we need to do it, right? So I always try to show, what's in it for the people. Is it gonna be, better process, more safety, more convenient, working environment, and growth in top line that gets them potentially got a additional economic benefit out of business growing, more jobs created, promotions, and so on. So I always try to link the digital execution and the strategy that we have to business outcome, and link to what's in it for the people. Because once they see it very clearly and concretely, not on PowerPoint, town hall slides, and so on, right? But concretely, okay, now if I do this, there's something that I can win personally about it, then they're gonna be, driving. Probably, not as fast as we always want, and different people have different pace, but at least, things are progressing. Then we can stimulate, and also combining with having the right people in the right place to drive, because, oftentimes, when you know that at certain points you need to accelerate things, then you need to understand if the leaders and the managers are really, first, have the skills to do so, and second is motivated to drive.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe here the question from Jennifer. I don't know, Steve, if you want to take that one, linked to this point. How important is the training for employees when it comes to engaging them, right? I mean, do you need to spend time and resources on this so that they also move to these digital channels? I mean, you said it earlier, we cannot talk to our customers anymore. And I remember this at Insead, right? From one day to the other, all the classes are happening on Zoom. Do we have the resources? Do we have the technology? Do we have the mindset? How do you deal with the training of the employees? Question from Jennifer.
So I think you're raising the adoption of digitalization, because you can create an amazing platform or tools or value, but if you don't have the adoption from your organization and the customer, you waste everything. And I like the point from Veronica. I think the communication is very critical to explain this is part of your strategy. That has to be your direction, and you show the win, the quick win. But in the same time, I think the new world is not really to go to say you have to train everyone to do something, because actually everyone has a mobile, they have application, no one trained them to use the application. Or if you go to internet, this is the same. So there is a process of curiosity need to be enabled, but in the same time, you have to make sure that your digitalization is convenient to use, which means you don't need to make, otherwise you will never move. If you spend your time to train everyone to use something new, you will never move on digitalization. So we have a program which is probably a basic of digitalization to give you the different terminology like IoT or 5G or all the stuff that people should know. But in the same time, I think people have to be more digital savvy. And what we did as well, we create a lot of diversity by integrating with our integration in our organization, people from different world, like fintech, for example, where they have this very early mindset of digital transformation and help to drive ideas and move. So it's kind of using a traditional organization and integrating new type of profile and diversity to move all the entire organization. So I think this is probably one of the painful process, I have to be honest, because you have to really make a focus on enabling your organization on digital. It doesn't come by itself, and you have a lot of people will even push back because they think it's a threat for their job in somehow. So because the fear of the digitalization exists, so you have to really break it and embed your leadership to be the champion on the digitalization.
Yeah, maybe related to this answer, and Veranita, your earlier point about how innovations are run at AirAsia. I mean, Alexei's question here is right on this topic, right? So how do you do this? Because now we're moving a little bit already into organizational structure, right? Do you have an internal team working on this, constantly driving innovation? Because we are back at, if our traditional people do it, I mean, do they have the right mindset, right? So I always call it the digital lipstick on a legacy pig, right? So it just doesn't really work. So how do you do this, Veranita? The question from Alexei here.
Right. So in our case, what I do is start from the leadership, to be very, very honest. Again, point number one is making it very clear on how all the innovation and digitalization impacts business results and impact the people. The second one is the leadership needs to demonstrate that in their own activities with their team, they're also championing digitalizations. I give an example. We have, in organization, we have a lot of chat platforms, right? We have chat bots, we have bots as dashboards and so on, right? Very, very fancy. But if the leaders don't pick that up and, show the people that, hey, I myself doing this, right? As opposed to I have 3 people doing PowerPoint for me with all the numbers and so on. No, I organize a data studio, right? Where I organize myself the data and I extract data and I make decisions using this data. So it has to come also from the top. Again, this isn't a mixed approach. I don't see that, one single approach will do it all ever. Right. And the other thing is also, again, as I shared, that is very critical for us to identify which positions that can create a tipping point impact in a way that, not all positions are equal, but there are certain positions where we know that if we can have the person driving with kind of driving attitude and also with the, very deep digital mindset, they will have, amplified impacts with their surroundings. So we got to start identifying this in organizations. We have to make the bold decisions to make sure that the right person sits in the right position, and combined with the leadership, combined with the tools and processes, because sometimes people like, okay, I like the idea, but then again, the process is not really, in line, right? You have digital, but all the processes are still manual. Right, so you gotta tie things up. So that's the way I see things work in our situation.
And maybe here, Steve, yeah, sorry.
I will make a comment because it's interesting. I would say we have probably the similar way, even we are in a very different industry. You have to find the enabler and you have to link the digital with your processes because you have to integrate everything. We also create a small team that are creating, try to understand the innovation on digitalization. Okay, try to see whether a new technology or new element then can be integrated within our business model or within what we are doing. So it's an hybrid mode where you have your leadership really show as a role model, and decision data process is probably a big step for many leadership because they have to stop the PowerPoint and learn how to use Tableau or other tools. And I think this is where the starting point on digitalization, because it's a digital mindset, and the digital mindset is something you have to enable to all your organization, not just part of your organization.
Yeah, but here maybe that's what I realized with many companies, and the famous cases of the companies that went bankrupt, they only did it internally, right? So here maybe interesting question from Ruxandra, who was also asking the question about should digital transformation be internalized, or I mean, Steve, you said earlier you're getting some outside help, some external hires, right? Which some companies said, hey, we should have done that as well, like Kuoni that went bankrupt, right? Blockbuster, you name it, right? Radio Shack. I mean, all the companies that disappeared because they did transformation within their limited view. So how do you see this? I mean, on the one hand, I got you, like everybody in the organization needs to have that mindset. But do you think companies should get outside help, whether it's through new hires, whether it's through whatever consulting firms, whether it's through partners? I mean, what's your perspective?
I can answer. Yeah, I agree. I think there is an ecosystem. The digital, I really think the word ecosystem has been really growing up, because in digitalization you don't do much yourself. You integrate or you build, but it's an assembly of different things. Because sometimes you want to be fast, and existing technology will make you being fast. Sometimes it requires too many resources to make it happen. But you still need to also integrate people in your company that have certain knowledge. So I think it's a mix of everything that you have to make constant decision whether I do it myself or using an existing product, or I really outsource everything. But it's not like, I give you an example. If you do data management, you can use an external company to collect the data, and then you will use another company to clean the data. And then after, when you have those clean data, you put on your server and you do all the data setup and Tableau by yourself. That's a typical process. You will not clean the data because you don't have an organization, and typically they use a lot of robotics that you don't develop for yourself, and it's a very commodity business now. It's the same for acquiring data. There are companies very specialized for this. You cannot at your scale have the right to do it. So it's really making the right choice for the right step.
Yeah. Maybe two last question here, because you bring up a good point, Steve, and I am just scrolling through the multiple questions from the audience, which is great here, and lots are linked to data, right? So whether it's trends, I see it here from Timothy, right, about artificial intelligence or machine learning. So how do you, maybe short answer here, so how do you leverage now data at scale, real time, back to your initial point, Veranita and Steve, to drive growth? And what were the challenges when you were setting this up?
All right. In our case at Airasia, we use machine learning and all the artificial intelligence first as an example for our customer service. We don't have our physical person doing customer service anymore. We have a chatbot platform for that, Ava. So that we really capture all the conversations and from the consumers, and understand who are asking and what kind of questions and responses that they expect. So we have better learning from the conversations with these consumers through this platform. The other thing is also on we do a lot of bundling programs when it comes to, because we want to, we're in our transitions to become a super app for ASEAN. So not only airline is the anchor of all the things that we do on top. So we have a lot of bundling programs with hotels, with activities, with food services, with cargo, that can only be generated using machine learnings in terms of understanding what kind of propositions and offerings that works best for each of consumers that we have. So that's how we, power the growth using data and digitalizations in action.
No. Any final comments to add, Steve, on the data question?
No, I think that the challenge you will see on data is where are coming from the data. I think it's always the big question, where are my data? When you understand where they are and how to get them together, you can do a lot of powerful things, but you have to invest on data scientists, data analysts, because they are the people who are really crunching your data where you will never be able. I think and then after you learn the world of AI step by step, it's small AI and then really machine learning, it's really the next step. But it's really a step-by-step approach on data, from understanding where you are to what you really think it could be possible.
Great. I mean, with this, let's maybe, Kate, if you want to show this one closing slide, because I think it fits very well, right? The human-centered organization here for the audience, because you said it, Veranita and Steve, right? We talked a lot about the strategy, right? The customer-centric strategy in the middle. But now, as you said, and as you also mentioned earlier, you need the right mindset, right? You need the infrastructure, the body, the tools, the processes, right? And you need the right soul, right? The behaviors, the rituals, the systems. I mean, so really great. Hopefully and I'm pretty sure the audience got lots of insights from the two of you. Was a pleasure to have you here today. But now let me, with this, and you will stay on, of course, if there are questions from people now interested in the degree programs, before I hand over to Mike, who will handle the second part here of this webinar, giving the audience more insights about our programs. But thanks a lot, Steve and Veranita, for the fantastic insights. Mike,
Thanks,
over to
Joerg.
you.
Thanks, Steve. Very good exchange.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks, Joerg. And that was absolutely a great insight to digital transformation. And thanks, Veranita. Thanks, Steve, for participating, and to all those on the call. I really hope it gave you some interesting reflection points and topics to see how digital transformation is going to be changing your industry. So by way of introduction, and Tony mentioned this earlier, I look after all of the executive degrees recruitment for Insead globally. And before our Q&A session, I just wanted to give you a short overview of Insead and our degree programs, to give you a basis for the conversation. So, as most of you will know, Insead is very much a mission-driven institution. Founded in 1957 with our first intake in 1959, Insead was created as an international business school that would bring people together and use business as a platform for peace and prosperity, and a school that could stimulate economic growth and inspire international cooperation. Now, today, we are certainly grappling with a number of difficult challenges, as many businesses are, from climate change, geopolitical conflicts, widespread inequality, and obviously the current health crisis we're all facing today. But for our part, Insead is very much still dedicated and committed to preparing future leaders. Now, how we do this is certainly a question for everyone at the moment, but we're still sort of, with courage and conviction, going to the market, bringing people, cultures, and ideas together in whichever way we can to develop these leaders who will transform businesses and societies for the better. Now, digital transformation is obviously a massive focus for us at the moment, but coupled with all the teachings and learnings, this will certainly be a formidable topic moving forward. So now, just to give you a little bit of an overview of our programs. So the Masters in Management is a 14 to 16 month full-time program, and this is designed to empower the next generation of well-rounded, innovative individuals at the early stages of their careers, helping to remain competitive in this increasingly challenging job landscape. The MBA is a 10-month full-time program, which is a transformational experience that will develop successful and responsible leaders suitable for our mid to late or early to mid career professionals. The program will develop your full potential and really open those doors to global career opportunities. The Executive Masters in Finance is an 18-month global modular program, which is designed to develop financial expertise and leadership depth for mid to senior professionals, preparing the next generation of leaders that will help drive our finance industry into the future through transformation and strategic development. The EMBA, Executive MBA, this is a 14 to 22-month global modular program suited to those senior professionals and executives looking to break through to the next stage of their careers through developing skills in leadership, strategy, transformation, and entrepreneurship, along with building a diverse global network of friends, peers, and business contacts along the way. Our dual Tsinghua Insead Executive MBA, or TIEMBA, provides an additional option for these experienced executives in partnership with the Tsinghua University in Beijing. This unique program gives participants an in-depth understanding of business in China from both international and domestic perspectives. And finally, we come to the Executive Masters in Change, which is an 18-month modular program designed to take its participants deep into the basic drivers of human behavior and the hidden dynamics of organizations where they can integrate business education with a range of psychological disciplines. And this program enables you to understand yourself and others at a fundamental level. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight to the programs, and then following my part here, I can hand over to my colleagues, Aidan O'Halloran, who looks after our MBA and MIM recruitment, and also Tony Wajaja, as you met earlier, who looks after the executive degrees recruitment across EMBA, EMC, and MFin, and they'll be able to address any questions that you have. Should you have any further questions, you can get in contact with some of our representatives, and the email addresses will be the program, whether it's MBA, MIM, EMBA, EMC, or emfin.info@insead.edu. But without further ado, I'll hand it over to Aidan and Tony, who can facilitate any questions you may have on the programs.
Thank you very much, Mike. Please feel free to type questions about the degree program. Aidan and I and alumni and prof will try to answer. Perhaps what I can do is get the ball rolling by asking the first question, which is quite a personal question for Veranita about her change. You have changed, Veranita. You've changed your company. You've changed your sector after graduating from the Insead program. So how has the Insead experience play a role, perhaps, in your professional evolution? If you could give insights to that.
Thank you. That's a very interesting question that reminds me when I was preparing to go to Insead. Remember, you helped me a lot to go to Insead. So first of all, I think Insead is a fantastic opportunity to prepare myself in a way that I had not anticipated before, because when I came to Insead, I had no clue that few years after I'll be, running a hundreds $1 million company, airline company, and especially airline company during COVID. Had no clue that that's going to happen. But I'm grateful that I made the right decision to go to Insead and prepare myself. And in three things. One is the breadth of knowledge coming from the diversity of the class, the diversity of the faculty, and the discussions that I had there. It was really breathtaking because, there's no majority at Insead, right? Everybody is representing a small fractions of either industry, nationalities, gender, and also seniority level. So it's fantastic. And also the leadership development. I think I have benefited a lot from the Insead experience coming from the team reflections and also coaching sessions that we had there. It was really, really good. And to sum the two things, it gives me confidence in a sense of I'm comfortable of not knowing things, because I know that I have now tools, I have frameworks that can help to, navigate in this uncertain environment. In the past, I was like kind of feel insecure of not knowing things. Today, I understand that, some things some things you don't. You got to find the resources to understand more. And, having the confidence really, really helps, because it really, helps you in your leadership role, because many people are looking up to you. So I think that summarizes my Insead experience. Thank you so much, Tony, for advising me to go to Insead and helping me through the process.
Thank you for being part of us. Really appreciate that. So are there questions from the ground? If not, I'll ask one more personal question to Steve. Steve, you've continued in the same company, very unlike most of the participants, in the Insead degree program, and you are staying in the same sector. So how would you describe the way Insead plays a role in your career, perhaps, since you haven't had any change like the one Veranita had experienced?
Yeah, I think it's coming to the same process where you go to the interview of Insead, you have the question why you want to join Insead. And I think my answer doesn't change so far. I've never been to Insead to change my career, but more or less to enhance my career, or at least to validate some point or get extra learnings. I'm from a technical background and very low finance background, and I think the Insead has been answering one of the key parts is all the corporate finance and all the finance aspect that was covering within the business and the enterprise. I think it's important. But in the same time, when you have been working long in a different area, Insead helped me to settle some aspect that I've been learning myself and come with from the theory to the practice, or the practice to the theory, making the connection. But finally, the discussion you have during the MBA are also very helpful, because you meet a lot of people from different type of sector, and all the exchange you have during the courses are very interesting, and in order to validate whether it's the same or different. And I think it's always a question, if you move to a different industry, will it be the same for a certain topic, or you will have different answer? And I think this is probably the things you learn across the process. And also the KMC and all the process with different professors with on very dedicated topics are very good. And I think the journey is really a learning for when some people are long in a certain business or in experience, it's refreshing a lot of new knowledge because I haven't been in school for a while. So I think this is probably an answer I like to say. And I have been using a lot of those knowledge even today in my position, and really thinking sometimes differently that I could do it before.
I completely agree. Thank you so much for mentioning the professor, and the teaching is indeed very valuable. This naturally links to the teaching with York. You've been awarded multiple times over the last years, including the Teaching Excellence Award with COVID. How difficult or how different has teaching become for you, Professor?
Oh yeah, that's a good question, Tony. And at the end, I mean, I'm really happy that at Insead we do what we discussed earlier, right? What Steve and Veranita talked about, that we not got pushed into COVID or into online teaching because of COVID. There was lots of stuff happening before, right? And I'm really, it's fantastic to see literally every faculty, how quickly we can move between the channels, right? A colleague teaching the core class where it was on campus, and then there was a little case happening, and within an hour the decision was made, and tomorrow it's all online, right? I think we all very well prepared with this new situation. And, I mean, for lots of the audience that's now listening, hopefully when you apply or when you join, we are back in a normal situation. But as we always say, it's a new normal, right? And I think there are lots of benefits we are getting out of this situation, which makes the experience, I would say, for students even better, right? Because now with this, back to what you said earlier, Steve, this omni-channel approach opens so many opportunities, right? I'm pretty sure in a year, 2 years from now, lots of stuff will happening online, and the program will be way more tailored, right? We adding electives to the curriculum every month, more or less. And the digital channels give us an opportunity to literally create a way more tailored program. So I think I speak for the entire faculty body, Tony. Everybody, of course, prefers to be, you see the Fontainebleau campus in my back here, to be on campus, to engage in person. But lots of great opportunities happened in the past, yeah.
Thank you. Kate, are there questions from the ground?
Yes, we have a few questions. I have a first question maybe for Aidan, asking, could you clarify the difference between the Insead MEM and MBA, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's a great question. So Insead is quite well known for our MBA. It's of course a top-ranked program, and we've recently launched the Master in Management, which is the newer program at Insead. And it's important to have a distinction between the two, because really the Master in Management is this pre-experience program which you can join straight after your undergraduate degree. So even if you have no professional experience, you can go for this program. However, of course, some internship experience would be useful. Whereas the MBA, the class has an average of around 5 years of professional experience. And so, it's usually between 3 to 8 years of professional experience going for the MBA. But if you have less than 2 years of professional experience, then absolutely the Master in Management would be a good one to consider.
Thank you, Aidan. I have a more EMBA related question now. After years out of school, how hard is it to adjust to an intensive program such as the Insead Gamba?
I think this question is best answered by one of the alumni.
Absolutely.
I think they were both out of school for more than 10 years before joining it. Perhaps, I don't know, Veranita or Steve, if you could answer that question.
I should start by saying terrible. I think it's a learning curve. At the beginning, definitely you feel overwhelmed by the number of things you have to learn, but actually also read, because it's a lot of reading. But in the end of the day, when you get back this capacity of reading fast and integrating information, you quickly start to really enjoy those reading. And when you stop the MBA, you miss the reading. So I think that there is the first phase is I have to learn fast to adapt, which for me has been okay. I mean, the second module probably I've been better, and so on. During all the process, you get used to and you are in. After you totally miss it, because you feel a blank of what you used to do. But otherwise, yeah, it went very well.
Yeah, in my case, I echo Steve. It's like sport, when you started, it was like painful to your bones, right? You hate every morning that you have to do it. But then again, once you're on it, right, you get used to it, then you get challenged, then you start, challenging yourself even more. And now I get to miss Insead a lot, because I love the session today, because I get to use Insead background, for year after so many years, right? So it's fantastic.
Thank you both for sharing. I have a question related to MBA and MIM, but maybe it could be answered by EMBA too. Is there a minimum GMAT score required to apply for MBA or MIM?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So we have no minimum GMAT score. I know some schools will have like a cutoff minimum score that you need to achieve, and there's no specific minimum GMAT score that you need in order to apply. And actually, I've seen so many applicants who self-exclude because they assume their GMAT is not high enough to apply, and they may have some excellent qualities to their profile, but they are concerned by what they read on the forums, and it's enough to scare them off applying. But it is of course a rigorous program, so having a strong GMAT can help to show evidence that you are able to handle that academic rigor. So the committee usually recommend of aiming for around 70 to 75th percentile in the verbal and the quant if you're aiming to apply for the MBA. But just to keep it in mind that it is just one element of the admissions process, which is truly a holistic admissions process where your entire profile will be taken into account and considered. So yeah, there's no minimum GMAT. You get the best score you can, and then you submit to the application and allow the committee to decide.
For executive MBA, there is no minimum. GMAT is one of the 3 possible options. The other one is executive assessment. It's like a mini GMAT, only 90 minutes instead of 3.5 hours. And the third option is our own internal assessment, which you can do. And it's an alternative to GMAT and EA. So these are the 3 possible options. We don't have a preference and we don't have a minimum score because we look at the applicant holistically. Thank you.
Thank you both. I have a faculty-related question. Who teaches on the Insead Gemba? I don't know, Professor, would you teach?
Oh, I mean, that's literally decided in the areas, right? So I teach, for example, 2 electives in the GEMBA program right now, one on digital transformation and the other one on brand management. I mean, as Tony said earlier, pre-Insead, I was doing lots of work in the brand management space. So that's usually decided by the area and by the deans who is teaching in these programs. But I mean, to my earlier point, thanks to digital, there are way more opportunities, right? It's not the classical programs we had 2 years ago, let's say, where it's like you have a core class and electives. I mean, now there are colleagues that say, hey, I have done just fantastic research over the last 6 months and I want to share it in the GEMBA program. There's always an opportunity to have a shorter session, right? A half day, a day. And I think that's just great. So you in the programs, you get exposed to lots of faculty. Yeah. And maybe, well, if I can, Kate, I see the question here from Ting Tang about the competitive advantage of taking the MBA program at Insead versus the US. I mean, I teach marketing, right? It's of course I'm saying Insead is the best, but marketing is about segmentation, and of course schools define their blue ocean and they want to create a competitive advantage. But I'm pretty sure Steve and Veranita, I mean, you can confirm this. I think what's Insead experience where it's really unmatched is this diversity that the community offers, right? I mean, from the students, I have to say, I mean, I really enjoyed every class is different. I mean, I can't remember, you have the numbers here, how many nationalities, is it 80 or 90 that sign up? The diversity in the faculty body, you will not get this at any other school. And at Insead, we are really believers. You learn so much just because of this, right? The diversity and the internationality. If that's what you're after, I have to say, I mean, not being at Insead, but you only have this one choice, right?
Thank you, Professor, for sharing. I have more than a question, a request about guidance for application. It's a MIM question. Where can I find more advice and guidance with my MIM application? Maybe
Sure.
Aiden?
Yeah, absolutely. I think today is a great opportunity to kind of to get an insight into Insead, but also to meet myself and Tony. We are working within Insead to support applicants through your whole journey to the school. So I believe we've already shared the contact details. So please feel free to connect with us. We will be there to help you through the entire process, because we know it can be daunting at sometimes, and sometimes you may have some quite specific questions about your profile. And that is exactly what we are here to do. We are here to guide you towards whichever program you choose to apply for. So yeah, connect with us.
I think everybody can answer the next question. Are they activities planned for partners at Insead? I don't know, Steve, Veranita, or even Winad, if you came with your partner at Insead, but is there something in place? I don't know who would like to answer that.
I don't, personally, I'm not. I was coming from China by myself, so I think I don't have. I can not really answer this question.
I also came by myself, and I think that's already enough.
I can maybe mention something here, because it's one of the best things that I saw when I joined Insead was the support for partners and for families. You know, I've been at other schools around the world where they were not so family friendly, and sometimes families were not, you know, always permitted to be on campus. Whereas you arrive at Insead and there is dedicated family facilities on campus, and so it was really incredible to see. And you know, in pre-COVID time, seeing the participants' children running around on campus was really lovely to see. And I think even partners, you know, partners are welcomed as part of the Insead community, especially if you're looking at, you know, full-time MBA, where I guess a lot of the candidates do bring their partners with them, and you see them really engaging into the community. There's activities for partners, there's activities that they're involved in with the MBA community. So those of you who are thinking of joining Insead and thinking of bringing your partners or even bringing your families with you, it is a really welcoming community to be a part of. And that's something that I'm really proud of to also be part of the school.
Maybe if I can add on that, when I went for my study, I was by myself, but in my cohorts, there were 6 newborn babies during the school time, and 4 of them are from the ladies who were in the cohorts. So what I wanted to highlight is that, you know, for the women out there who wanted to pursue the higher degree program, and having a concern about, you know, can I do this? I have a family, I want to have kids and all that. It's very possible. And also in the campus itself, there's a very good facility for moms who are, you know, bringing their babies in the school for nursing, and like a playground for the kids. So it's very supportive. Not only that, like all the food and, you know, anything that is needed to support the newborns and the youngsters are provided by the school.
Thank you, Rina. I have a next question for MBA. International experience is important to Insead. Can I still apply for the full-time MBA if I have only worked in my home country?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, it's something I wrote a blog piece about this quite a long time ago, because it's a common concern. And of course, you know, your international motivation is very important if you are considering Insead, given that Insead is, you know, the top international business school. I've heard it referred to as, you know, the United Nations of business schools, and you look at the level of diversity that's there. And so it is important to have that motivation, that passion for wanting to develop your intercultural communication skills, for perhaps pursuing a global career. But it is not specifically required to have worked in many different countries before coming to Insead. Many of our candidates have, of course. But, you know, it's much more than that. If you've been communicating with colleagues or clients, or, you know, even former classmates from different cultural backgrounds, and you're actively seeking out opportunities to be out of your cultural comfort zone, then Insead may be the perfect place for you. So you are still welcome to apply, even if you haven't worked in, you know, anywhere else other than your home country, as long as you have that exposure and you're clearly the type of person who seeks out more of that. And of course, you'd get that in bundles at Insead.
Thanks, Aidan. Maybe Tony, you could help me on this one. What does the admission committee look for?
Kate, you're freezing up. All right. I think the question is, what is it? Sorry, Kate, we lost you for like 9 seconds.
No problem. Did you hear the question? Okay.
Is it about what the admissions committee look for in executive MBA application?
Perfect.
Yeah. So there are 5 things, right? The first thing they look at is career evolution, how you have evolved in your career over the last 10 years. And also your current scope and scale of responsibility. They look at your motivation, why you want to come to this program, why now. They look at your cross-cultural exposure. They look at whether or not this applicant has academic risk. So they look at your 2 recommenders who submit the form to, you know, testify your leadership potential. They look at, it's a very holistic thing. So a lot of people come and say, hey, I've got this GMAT, hey, I've got this EA, I've got this. It's very difficult, because we look at it as we want to make sure that you are a well-rounded individual and you have the ability and the willingness to contribute to the class. So if you want to know the details, if you want to speak further, I'm happy to connect with me, right? I mean, you have the the email address. Please drop me a note and I'm happy to discuss with you one-on-one and talk about details. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. I think we have time for one last question. Unless one of you panelists saw a question in the Q&A, there's so many coming in, we won't be able to answer them all. I have seen questions about the actual situation, and I would like to know, are classes currently taking place virtually or online or physically, I guess you meant it?
Yeah,
What's
no,
happening at the moment?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's we try, of course, to do everything on campus, right? Because I think it's still great to have the on-campus experience, which MBA students really appreciate, or EMBA students, and many classes happen on campus, right? The good thing, again, we can adjust quickly and move quickly. But I don't know what it is right now, whether it's 50-50, depends again on the location. I know there are some classes happening in the Gemba program on campus, right? Or whether it's in Abu Dhabi. But overall, it's a good mix. And what I'm hearing from students is they really appreciate the experience and the efforts and the flexibility that everybody in the Insead team is putting to the table.
Yeah, classes are still on campus. So a lot of you, I saw some questions, are classes running online? In Insead, a lot of the learning actually does not come just purely from the codified material. I know a lot of you may have been through universities where the professor would just lecture from start to end, and you ask 2 questions and then you go home. But in Insead, you start to realize, you talk to to Veranita and Steve and Wina, you hear them saying that I actually learned a lot from the discussion from my classmates, right? Of course, from the professor, but you have to actively participate. So that's the reason why we cannot have 100% online. You know, there was a question about why don't you put the entire degree program online, right? Because you still come on campus, and we now have an agreement with the Economic Development Board of Singapore, where you do a 2-day quarantine with 2 swab tests. Of course, you have to wear one of these things. It's a facial shield, and you have to put them on as long as you're not eating or drinking, right? And so you still have the face-to-face with a lot of social distancing and COVID rules. But the experience is great because I am currently doing the Executive Master in Change. We call it EMC in short. And I'll be going for my 2nd module next month. And the experience is very intense. It's fantastic. You cannot physically shake hands, but there's a lot of interaction. I would say it's just as good, just in slightly different way. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tony. I'm conscious of time, and I think we're gonna wrap up this event. If we didn't get time to answer your question, please feel free to drop us an email at the relevant email address. So it's just the name of the program, .info@insead.edu. I would like to thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Professor Veranita and Steve, for this very insightful interview. Thank you, Tony, Mike, and Aidan, for presenting and answering questions about the degree program. And a very special thank you to Wina, who's part of the Indonesian Alumni Association and the Executive Committee, for bringing people together and making this event happen. We wish you all a nice morning, a nice afternoon, or a nice evening, depending on where you're located. Hopefully, we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate it.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Thanks for the great questions. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.